Spain's rivals rise. The dark truth behind the New World power struggle. Let's go back to a time when Spain seemed unstoppable. While Spain was busy plundering the New World, Europe itself was falling apart. Religious chaos spread across the continent. The Reformation threw powerful nations like England and France into turmoil. Wars dragged on for years, draining resources, time, and countless lives. In France alone, millions died in brutal religious violence. But as the violence in Europe slowly began to fade, something interesting happened. The conflict didn't disappear, it simply moved. It moved to the New World. Spain's massive success, its gold, its silver, its vast empire, caught the attention of every European monarch. And soon, other nations began asking a simple question. Why should Spain have it all? Stories of Spanish cruelty spread rapidly across Europe. One of the most influential voices was Bartolomé de las Casas, whose writings described horrifying acts committed by the Spanish. An English version of his work even had a dramatic title accusing Spain of unimaginable massacres and cruelty. According to these reports, Native Americans were peaceful people living simple lives. But the Spanish, driven by greed for gold, forced them into brutal labor under the burning sun. Many died from exhaustion. Others, unable to bear the suffering, took their own lives. Some even refused to have children because they did not want them to be born into slavery. Of course, Spain didn't accept these accusations quietly. They dismissed them as propaganda, a black legend created by their enemies. But, whether exaggerated or not, the damage was done. England, France, and the Netherlands used these stories as moral justification. They claimed that Spain was not spreading Christianity, but destroying it. And they argued that a better, more humane colonization could save the people of the New World. And so, driven by both religion and profit, Spain's rivals began to arrive. The French entered the race early in the 16th century, searching for something almost mythical, the Northwest Passage, a water route through North America that would lead directly to Asia. They never found it, but what they did find was just as important: the St. Lawrence River, stretching deep into the continent and connecting to the Great Lakes. This became the backbone of French colonial power. Unlike Spain, France didn't focus on conquering land. They focused on trade, especially fur. In 1608, Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec, marking the beginning of New France. But here's what made the French different. They didn't try to dominate Native Americans. They cooperated with them. French traders depended on indigenous hunters for fur. Without them, there was no business. So instead of building massive settlements, they built relationships. Many even married Native American women. Their mixed heritage children became so common that they had a name: Métis. Missionaries also took a different approach. Instead of forcing natives into controlled settlements like the Spanish, Jesuits often lived among them, adapting to their cultures. For a time, this created something unique: a middle ground, where Europeans and Native Americans negotiated, traded, and coexisted. But this fragile balance didn't last forever. Disease devastated native populations. Conflicts with other European powers dragged native allies into deadly wars, and even the closest alliances began to crack under pressure. Next came the Dutch, a small nation with enormous ambition. In 1581, the Netherlands broke free from Spanish rule and quickly became one of the most advanced economic powers in the world. They pioneered modern capitalism, creating institutions like the Amsterdam Stock Exchange and powerful trading companies. They were also known for something rare at the time: religious tolerance. People of different faiths, including Jews and Protestants, flocked there for freedom. But don't mistake tolerance for equality. Power remained in the hands of a wealthy elite. And like other European powers, the Dutch were deeply involved in slavery. In 1609, they hired explorer Henry Hudson to find the Northwest Passage. He failed, but instead discovered the Hudson River, claiming the region for the Dutch. This led to the creation of New Netherland, centered around what is now New York. The Dutch, like the French, prioritized trade over conquest. They built strong trading networks with Native Americans, exchanging goods like wampum shell beads used as currency for valuable furs. They even attempted a more ethical approach to colonization. Inspired by legal philosopher Hugo Grotius, they believed Native Americans had natural rights. So, instead of taking land by force, they tried to buy it. In 1626, Peter Minuit famously purchased Manhattan. But there was a problem. It's likely they bought the land from the wrong people, or that both sides had completely different understandings of what ownership meant. As Dutch settlements expanded, conflict became inevitable. Land hunger grew, and peaceful trade gave way to violence. Meanwhile, the colony struggled with labor shortages. To solve this, the Dutch imported enslaved Africans. These enslaved workers built New Amsterdam, its roads, its walls, its infrastructure. By 1660, it had the largest enslaved urban population in North America. Interestingly, early Dutch slavery was somewhat different from later systems. Some enslaved people could earn wages, sue in court, or gain partial freedom. But make no mistake, the system grew harsher over time. Economic interests ultimately outweighed ideals of freedom. Finally, we turn to Portugal. Long before Columbus, Portugal had already mastered Atlantic navigation, but Spain's sudden wealth created intense rivalry between the two. To avoid conflict, the Catholic Church stepped in. In 1494, the Treaty of Tordesillas divided the New World between Spain and Portugal. Everything east of an imaginary line went to Portugal. Everything west went to Spain. This line would shape the map of South America, especially Brazil. At first, Portugal focused on Africa and India. But by 1530, they turned their attention to Brazil. They established settlements, drove out French traders, and built a powerful colonial economy. Two industries dominated: sugar and slavery. In fact, over the course of the Atlantic slave trade, more Africans were sent to Brazil than anywhere else in the Americas. Gold was discovered later, but sugar and slavery remained the backbone of the economy. Religion in Brazil also took a unique form. Jesuit missionaries spread Christianity, but African and native traditions blended with Catholic beliefs, creating a distinct cultural identity. Life on sugar plantations was brutal. Mortality rates were so high that new enslaved workers were constantly brought in from Africa. This created a continuous cultural link between Brazil and Africa, but also constant resistance. Escaped enslaved people formed independent communities called quilombos. Some of these settlements survived for generations, resisting repeated attacks. Despite all this competition, Spain remained the dominant power for now. The wealth extracted from the Aztec and Incan empires far exceeded anything other nations could achieve. But history was already shifting. By the end of the 16th century, a major turning point would arrive. The mighty Spanish Armada would fall, and soon, a new power would rise to rule the seas.